Oh, hey there, sugar. I didn't see you sneaking in like that. Go on, get comfortable. Slide right under them covers. Get yourself all snug and cozy. Ain't nobody gonna bother you here. Just you and old Herbert. I've been waiting for you, you know. Heh heh. I always know when you're coming round. You got that way about you. Just kind of floating on in here, all sleepy-eyed and quiet. I like that. I like it a lot. Makes it real easy to keep you company. Just me watching, you listening. Ain't that nice? I got something real special for you tonight. Oh, yes, it's a story you might know, but not the way I tell it. See, I like to put my own little touch on things, make 'em a bit more personal. Tonight, we're going to take a little trip down memory lane, all the way back to the land of Snow White and the 7 Dwarves. I bet you remember her, all soft and sweet, skin like porcelain, lips like fresh cherries. Oh, I bet you remember her real well. Now, don't you worry, sugar. I'm going to tell you every little detail, every last bit, and old Herbert's going to make sure you don't miss a thing. But before we get started, I want you to do me a little favor. Go on and tap that big old subscribe button. Just give it a little tap, like someone knocking on your window late at night. Real soft, real gentle. Yeah, just like that. I like the sound it makes. Real smooth. Like you're saying, you'll be back to see me again? If you do that, I promise, I'll keep on telling you all my favorite stories. The kind that make your skin tingle and your heart thump a little harder. Oh, I can feel you blushing already. I do love it when you blush. Ain't nothing better than that sweet little look on your face. Just you and me, all quiet and comfy. Now, let's you and me get real settled, 'cause I got a whole lot of story to tell you. And if you're real good, maybe I'll tell you something else here you didn't know. Something just for you. So, are you ready? I bet you are. Just close them eyes, relax, and let old Herbert take you back to that little cottage in the woods, where dreams are soft and whispers are real sweet. Just like that. Now, let's take a little stroll back through them woods, deep where the trees grow thick and the light gets real soft, just the way I like it. That's where you'll find her, Snow White. Oh, I bet you remember her real well. Ain't nobody forgets a face like that, skin all soft and pale, like she'd never been touched by the sun, or anything else for that matter. Hey, Nim, I always did have a thing for the quiet ones. You know, the ones that look like they just need a little company. They say her mama wished for her, wanted a daughter with skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, and hair as black as ebony. That's a mighty fine wish, don't you think? I reckon I'd make a wish like that too. If I could, I'd be watching her every day, just making sure she was safe. Maybe peeking through them tall trees every now and then, just to make sure she's all right. Ain't nothing wrong with looking, sugar. Just a little peek, just enough to satisfy a fellow's curiosity. Now, Snow White, she grew up just as pretty as that wish, maybe even prettier. She'd wander around that castle, sweeping them floors, humming little tunes to herself, with that voice like honey dripping slow and sweet. I always did like a girl who kept herself busy. Nothing better than watching someone work real hard. Gets the blood flowing, don't you think? Heh. But there was someone who didn't appreciate her like I would have her stepmother, the Queen. Oh, she was a real piece of work, always glancing in that mirror, asking it who the prettiest one was, like she didn't already know. But I guess some folks just like to hear it out loud. Ain't nothing wrong with wanting a little reassurance. I wouldn't mind telling Snow White she's the prettiest one, every day if she wanted me to. Now, that mirror, it didn't tell no lies. Every time she asked, it told her Snow White was the fairest of them all. And I reckon I'd have to agree. Oh, yes, all that dark hair falling over them shoulders, eyes like little pools you could just get lost in. Hee-hee-hee. I'd have to get real close, just to make sure. Wouldn't want to miss any of them pretty details. But that didn't sit right with the Queen, not one bit. See, she liked being the center of attention, liked watching herself all dolled up, and I suppose I can understand that. But when it came to Snow White, well, she wasn't having it. And that's where things start to get real interesting, sugar. That's where our little story really begins. Now the Queen, she wasn't the sort to take bad news kindly. Oh no, she was a real proud thing, sharp eyes and a jaw clenched up tighter than a locked door. That mirror, well, it had been telling her for years that she was the fairest of them all. And I reckon she got real used to hearing it, like a sweet little whisper every morning, just stroking her ego, telling her she still had it. But the day that mirror changed its mind, well, that was the day things took a turn. I can just picture it. Her standing there in that big old room, curtains pulled back just enough to let the sunlight spill in, glancing at her reflection with that sharp little grin she always wore. "Mirror, mirror, on the wall," she'd say, all sing-songy, like she was expecting the same answer she always got. But this time, oh, sugar, this time that mirror had something different to say. It told her straight. Snow White, it said, Snow White is the fairest of 'em all. Oh, I bet you could have heard a pin drop. That grin must have slid right off her face. Them eyes going all wide, and I bet her hands started clenching up real tight too. Ain't nobody likes being told they've been replaced, especially not a woman like that. I bet she just stood there, staring at herself, like she could maybe will it back into place. But that mirror don't lie, and neither do I. I always did wonder, just a little, if she maybe watched Snow White the way I did. Not that she'd admit it, but I reckon she took a peek every now and then, just to see if that mirror was right. I sure would have. Oh yes, I'd have been peeking through them doors, just watching her sweeping the halls, humming them sweet little songs to herself, all quiet and innocent. Sometimes it's nice to just watch, ain't it? Just let your eyes do the work. No harm in that. But the Queen, she didn't take to watching. Oh, no, she wanted something done. So she called for her huntsman, big old fella with hands like shovels. She gave him real simple instructions, said he was to take Snow White out to the forest, far away from the castle, and make sure she never came back. Now, that's a real shame, don't you think? All that beauty, all that sweet innocence, just snuffed out like a candle in the wind. I would have done things real different. Oh, yes, real different. I'd have made sure she was taken care of, real gentle, watched over, kept safe. Ain't nothing wrong with a little protectiveness, sugar. Ain't nothing wrong at all. But the Queen, she didn't want her safe. She wanted her gone. And that huntsman, well, he didn't have much choice. When the Queen tells you to do something, you do it. But I reckon you and me both know that wasn't the end of Snow White. Oh, no. Not even close. She had herself a little adventure waiting for her out there in the woods, and I bet you're just dying to hear all about it. Now that huntsman, he wasn't too pleased with the job he'd been given. Oh, no. See, he'd seen Snow White, too. Watched her from the shadows when she'd walk through the gardens, picking flowers and singing to the birds. I reckon a man like him, all rough and calloused, he wasn't used to seeing something so soft and sweet, just floating around like that. Can't blame him for hesitating. I'd have hesitated, too. Probably would have stood there a good long while, just taking it all in. Yeah. No harm in appreciating the scenery. The Queen gave him strict orders to take her out to the woods, far from prying eyes, and make sure she didn't come back. But when the time came, when Snow White turned those big old eyes up at him, all wide and innocent, well, he couldn't do it. Just couldn't bring himself to hurt her. I think he knew, deep down, that something that sweet shouldn't be left alone in the dark. I always did like a fellow with a soft spot. Makes it easier to, well, you know, keep an eye on things. He told her to run real far, real fast, deeper into the woods where the Queen wouldn't find her. He didn't even look back, just stood there, breathing heavy, hands shaking. You ever watch somebody when they're real scared, sugar? When their hands just won't stop trembling and their eyes get all big and shiny? I always did like that look. Means they're alive. Means they're feeling every little thing. Snow White ran. Oh, did she run? Branches snapping under her feet, leaves crunching, the whole forest just swaying with her footsteps. I bet she didn't even look back. Didn't want to see what might be chasing her, and I can imagine it real clear, her hair catching the wind, little pieces of her dress snagging on branches, like the woods didn't want to let her go. If I'd have been there, well, I reckon I'd have helped her right along, made sure she didn't trip or stumble, you know, just to keep things smooth. She kept going, deeper and deeper, until the light started to fade. Shadows stretching long and dark, fog slipping between the trees like it was following her. That's the thing about the woods. They got a way of closing in on you, making you feel like you're being watched. I bet she felt it. Every step she took, eyes just watching her from the trees, branches creaking like they were whispering her name. Oh, I'd have watched real close. Wouldn't have missed a single second. When she finally stopped, breathing heavy, leaning up against a tree with her hands on her knees, I bet her heart was just thumping away. I like it when folks get all out of breath. Means they've been working real hard, running, sweating, just trying to get away. Heh. But old Herbert's always watching, always listening. Ain't nowhere to hide from me. But wouldn't you know it, that little run of hers led her right to something real special. A tiny cottage, all tucked away in the trees, like it was waiting for her. And what she found inside, well, I reckon you might already know. But I'm going to tell you anyway. And I'm going to tell you real slow, just the way you like it. Now, when Snow White stumbled upon that little cottage in the woods, I reckon she was more tired than she'd ever been. All that running, all that fear just hanging on her shoulders. I bet her little heart was just thumping away, trying to climb right out of her chest. Yeah, I always did like it when folks get a little flustered, cheeks all pink, breathing heavy. It's a real nice look, don't you think? That cottage. Well, it wasn't much bigger than a garden shed, really. Tucked right there under a canopy of old trees. Almost like it was hiding. Moss growing up the sides. Little windows fogged up like it'd been cooking something real nice inside. I bet if I'd been there, I'd have taken a real good look, just to see what was on the other side. Ain't no harm in peeking. Just a little, just enough to satisfy that curiosity. Snow White didn't waste no time. Oh, no. She pushed right through that door, all soft and creaky, like it was just waiting for her to come inside. And wouldn't you know it, the place was perfect. Little chairs lined up nice and neat, a table set for dinner, and the beds. Oh, sugar, there were 7 of 'em, all lined up in a row, with sheets pulled tight and pillows fluffed up just right. I reckon I could have watched her explore that place all day. Just touching things, peeking into corners, real slow-like. Ain't nothing wrong with watching, just so long as you don't get caught. She went right to work, cleaning up like she'd lived there all her life, sweeping the dust from the floor, brushing the cobwebs from the rafters, even humming a little tune while she did it. I always did like it when folks hum while they work. Means they're real comfortable. Means they ain't looking over their shoulder. They just let their guard down. Just a little. Now those beds. Oh, she didn't waste no time trying 'em out. One by one she laid herself down, stretching out real slow, letting her eyes drift shut just for a moment, like she couldn't help herself. I reckon I would have picked the one closest to the window. You know, just to make sure I could peek inside every now and then, just to make sure she was sleeping real sound. Ain't nothing wrong with wanting to keep an eye on things, especially something that pretty. But Snow White, she picked the last bed, the littlest one, just tucked herself right under them covers, all cozy like. I bet the whole place got real quiet. Just the sound of her breathing, all slow and gentle. You ever watch someone sleep? Just stand there, real still, listening to them little breaths, watching the way their eyes flicker under their lids. It's real peaceful, real nice. I reckon I could have stood there for hours, just listening. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all. But of course, you and I both know that cottage wasn't empty. Oh, no. It belonged to 7 little men, 7 hard-working fellas that were about to come home to a real big surprise. Ain't that just something? But I don't want to rush it, sugar. We gotta take our time. Gotta savor it. 'Cause what happened next, well, it was real special. Now, while Snow White was sleeping real sound in that little bed, there were 7 hard-working fellas making their way back home. Oh, I bet you know the ones I'm talking about. Them dwarfs. 7 little men all working down in the mines, digging and hauling, sweating and grunting, all day long. I always did admire folks who put in a hard day's work up a good sweat. Nothing like it. They came marching back, singing their little song, stomping through the trees like they didn't have a care in the world. Ain't that just something? A whole gang of 'em, all lined up, pickaxes resting on their shoulders, whistling away like life was nothing but sweet and simple. I reckon I wouldn't mind having me a few helpers like that, coming home every day, tracking in a bit of dirt, shuffling around all tired and dusty. I'd have to make sure they got all cleaned up real good. Wouldn't want 'em tracking mud everywhere. Now, when they got back to that little cottage, something was different. Oh, I bet they could feel it. Like the air was just a bit warmer. Like the place wasn't so lonely anymore. I can imagine 'em peeking through the window, scratching their heads, wondering why the lights were on, why the door was just a little bit open, like it was inviting 'em inside. One by one they shuffled in, real slow, real careful, looking around like they was expecting to find something waiting for 'em. The dishes were clean, the floor swept, even the chairs were all pushed back just right. I bet old Doc was scratching his head, muttering to himself, trying to figure out who'd been in their house. I always did like folks who get all flustered, just watching them wander around, all confused, wondering if maybe someone's been watching them. Heh. They crept up the stairs, little feet tapping on the wood real soft, trying not to make too much noise. And when they opened that door, oh, sugar, there she was, Snow White, all curled up in that little bed, breathing real soft, hair sprawled out over the pillow like she was just waiting to be found. Ain't that just a sight? I reckon if I'd been there, I would have stood in that doorway a real long time, just watching her sleep, counting the seconds between each breath, making sure she was real comfortable. Them dwarves, well, they were right surprised. Didn't know what to make of it. A pretty little thing like that, just sleeping away in their house. I bet old Grumpy was fussing up a storm, stomping around with his arms crossed, muttering under his breath. But the others, oh, see, I bet they were smiling, looking at each other with big old eyes, like they'd just found a little slice of heaven right there in their cottage. Ain't that something? And when she woke up, all sleepy-eyed and confused, well, I reckon she must have been surprised, too. 7 little men just standing around her bed, watching her real close, all curious and kind, asking her questions, wanting to know where she came from. I always did like it when folks are inquisitive. Ain't nothing wrong with wanting to know more. Nothing at all. But Snow White, she wasn't scared. Not even a little. She smiled at 'em, real sweet-like. And I reckon that was all it took. Them dwarfs, they decided right then and there that she was going to stay, going to live with them and help keep the place clean. I bet they felt real lucky coming home to something like that every night, all soft and sweet, just humming away while she worked. Heh. If I had something like that waiting for me, well, I wouldn't never leave the house. And that's how it started. Snow White, the 7 little men, all cozy and happy, just like a real family. But you and I both know things don't stay sweet forever. Oh, no, there was still something out there, watching, waiting. And it wasn't done with Snow White just yet. Now, I reckon it didn't take long for Snow White to make herself right at home with them 7 little fellas. She just slipped right into the rhythm of things, like she'd been living there her whole life. Every morning, she'd wake up real early, hair all tousled, eyes all sleepy, and get right to work. I always did like folks who know how to get up early. Gives a fella more time to observe. Ain't nothing wrong with appreciating someone's work ethic, sugar. Nothing wrong at all. She'd sweep that little cottage from corner to corner, dusting off the shelves, humming them little songs to herself. I reckon them dwarfs didn't know what hit 'em. All their plates washed, their beds made, even their little boots lined up nice and neat by the door. I bet if I had me a Snow White to keep things tidy, well, I wouldn't ever leave. Just sit there in my chair, watching her flit around all day, making things real pretty. Yeah, I'd even help her if she wanted. Not that she'd need it, but I'd be right there, just to make sure she didn't miss a spot. Them dwarfs? Well, they went off to work every morning, pickaxes slung over their shoulders, whistling their little tunes. And Snow White, she'd wave 'em off from the doorway, watching 'em disappear into the woods, leaving her all alone in that big, empty house. Can you just imagine it? A whole cottage, just her, moving around real slow, dusting the windows, humming them songs. I reckon I'd have stopped by, just to check in, make sure she was doing all right. I'm real neighborly like that. Ain't nothing wrong with a little check-in, just to keep things safe. And wouldn't you know it, she even cooked for 'em. Oh, yes. Every evening, she'd have them pots bubbling away, stew simmering, bread baking, the whole place just smelling like a feast. I can just picture it. Her leaning over the stove, stirring them pots with her hair falling over her shoulder, that soft little hum drifting out the window, like she was calling out for someone to listen. I always did like a good home-cooked meal, especially if it's made with love and just a little bit of care. When the dwarfs came back from the mines, tired and dusty, they'd open that door and there she'd be, smiling real sweet, setting the table like she'd been waiting all day just for them. I reckon it must have felt real nice, coming home to something like that. Soft lights, warm food, and Snow White's sweet little voice greeting them at the door. Ain't that just something? And when dinner was done, she'd tuck 'em in, one by one, pulling the covers up real gentle, patting their heads, whispering good night. I bet that cabin got real quiet after that. Just the sound of her walking through the halls, checking the windows, making sure the door was locked, all by herself. I always did appreciate someone who knows how to lock up good at night. Keeps things secure. But you know, things weren't going to stay that way forever. You see, that wicked queen, she wasn't the sort to just let things go. Oh, no. She had a mirror, and she still had questions. Questions that needed answering. And I reckon she wasn't going to like what she heard. Now, I reckon those dwarfs got real used to coming home to Snow White, all soft and sweet, humming to herself while she stirred them pots. It didn't take long for that little cottage to feel more like a home, warm and cozy, the kind of place you'd want to stay forever. I always did like the idea of a place like that. You know, real snug, real private, where you can watch everything that goes on without ever having to leave. Ain't nothing wrong with wanting to be real close. Nothing wrong at all. Every night, them 7 little fellas would come trudging up the path, boots dragging through the dirt, shoulders slumped with the weight of a hard day's work. But when they opened that door, oh, sugar, it was like they'd stepped right into a dream. The fire would be crackling, the table all set, and there she'd be, Snow White, smiling real sweet, just waiting for 'em. I reckon I could watch something like that every single day. Never get tired of it. Hee. I'd make sure I had the best seat in the house, right by the window, so I wouldn't miss a thing. She'd help 'em with their coats, dust the dirt off their shoulders, even pull their little chairs out for 'em. Oh, I bet them dwarfs never felt so lucky. I always did think there's nothing quite like coming home to someone waiting just for you, all bright-eyed and happy, like you're the only thing they've been thinking about all day. Ain't that just something? They'd eat together, all laughing and talking, Snow White serving 'em up with that little smile of hers, like she couldn't be happier to have 'em there. And them dwarfs, Well, they treated her like she was something special, like she was made of glass. I bet they couldn't help but watch her sometimes. Just a little. Just enough to appreciate the way she moved around that little room. Ain't nothing wrong with watching, so long as you keep real quiet and don't get caught. But what I reckon I liked the most was what came after. Oh, yes. When the eating was done and the cleaning was wrapped up, Snow White would walk them one by one to their little beds, pull them covers up real snug, pat them on the head, whisper good night, just soft enough for only them to hear. I always did like it when folks whisper. Makes it feel like it's just for you, like a little secret, just between the two of you. When she got 'em all settled, she'd move real quiet through that little cottage, pulling the curtains, locking the doors, humming her sweet little songs. I reckon if I'd been around, I might have helped her check those locks, make sure they were real secure. Wouldn't want nothing sneaking in during the night. Heh. I'm real good at watching out for things. Real good at it. And wouldn't you know it, them dwarfs slept real sound, like nothing could touch 'em. I always did like that. Folks sleeping real peaceful. Makes it real easy to watch 'em without 'em stirring. Ain't nothing better than seeing someone all quiet and still, just breathing real soft, eyes fluttering under their lids, like they're dreaming about something real nice. But dreams don't last forever, sugar. Oh, no. And this one was about to get cut real short. See that queen? She hadn't forgotten about her little mirror, and she sure as hell hadn't forgotten about Snow White, and I reckon she was just about ready to do something about it. Now, life with them dwarfs got real comfortable real quick. Snow White just slid right into that little cottage life like she'd been doing it her whole life. Every morning, the sun would peek through them little windows, spilling soft light across the floor, and there she'd be, just fluttering around the kitchen, humming to herself, sweeping up dust, like it was her favorite thing to do. Ain't that just something? Watching someone go about their little routines, real peaceful, like they don't got a care in the world. I always did like that. Makes it real easy to just watch. Now, them dwarfs, they worked hard every day, marching off to the mines at sunrise, whistling that little tune of theirs. I bet you know the one. Heh. Sometimes I catch myself whistling it too, when I'm keeping an eye on things. Snow White would wave 'em off from the door, hand all gentle, eyes bright and shiny, like she was going to miss 'em something fierce. I bet she did too. I bet she'd stand there a real long while, just watching the dust settle from their footsteps, listening to their voices fade into the woods, and then, oh, sugar, then she'd get right to work, sweeping, dusting, washing them dishes real careful, even shaking out the little rugs by the door. I reckon she liked it. Made her feel useful. Made her feel like she belonged. Ain't nothing wrong with wanting to belong. I reckon I'd make her feel real welcome, too. Just watching her move around, keeping things clean, humming them sweet little songs, like she didn't know a soul was listening. Ain't nothing wrong with watching someone work hard. I'm real good at watching. Just ask anybody. Hey. And wouldn't you know it, by the time them dwarfs came home, that place was spotless. Fire burning real nice, stew bubbling away, the table all set with little bowls and tiny spoons, just waiting for 'em to dig in. I can just picture it. Snow White leaning over the stove, stirring that pot, steam rising up all around her, cheeks a little flushed from the heat, hair falling loose over her shoulders. Ain't nothing prettier than a girl who knows how to keep a house. I reckon I'd have helped her stir, just to make sure it was done real proper. Ain't no harm in lending a hand, not if it's done gentle. Them dwarfs would come stomping back in, all dirty and tired. But the second they walked through that door, you could see it. That big old smile spreading across their faces, eyes all lit up. I always did like watching folks get comfortable, watching them settle in, stretch out, relax. Makes a place feel real warm, real safe. I bet she'd serve 'em up, ladling that stew into their bowls, watching 'em eat, making sure they were well fed. I like that, taking care of folks, keeping 'em real close, real well fed. And when the supper was done, they'd sit around the fire, telling stories, laughing, like they didn't have a single worry. Snow White would listen real close, eyes big and shiny, hands folded in her lap, just soaking it all in. I always did like folks who listen. Means they care, means they're paying attention. I reckon she was real good at paying attention, maybe even good enough to notice if someone was watching from the window. Ha ha. But I don't think she ever did. Ain't nothing wrong with peekin', just so long as you don't get caught. Oh, sugar, that little life of hers was looking real sweet, real perfect. But you and I both know, things don't stay perfect forever. See, that queen was still out there, watching, waiting, and I reckon she was about ready to pay Snow White a little visit. And when she did, well, things weren't so cozy after that. Now, while Snow White was getting all cozy in that little cottage, baking pies, humming sweet songs, and dusting them tiny shelves, the queen was back at her castle, stewing something fierce. Oh, yes. She hadn't forgotten about that little mirror, and she sure as hell hadn't forgotten about Snow White. I reckon she spent a whole lot of time just watching that mirror, staring at her own reflection, whispering things to herself like she was trying to make it all go away. But that mirror, well, it don't lie. Every time she asked, every single time she called out with that sweet little rhyme of hers, it always said the same thing. Snow White, it'd say, all clear and honest. Snow White is the fairest of them all. Oh, I bet that stung something fierce. Bet it crept right under her skin, twisted her up real tight inside. I always did like watching folks get all flustered, faces going red, hands shaking, just trying to keep it all together. I reckon if I'd been there, I would have watched real close, just to see that little crack spread across her face, that little bit of crazy peek out from behind her eyes. Ain't nothing wrong with watching folks come apart, so long as you're quiet about it. Now that queen, she wasn't about to let some pretty little thing take her place. Oh no. She started thinking, planning, whispering to herself when she thought no one was listening. I always did like that, when folks think they're alone, when they start talking to themselves, letting all them little secrets slip out. Makes it real easy to learn things, real easy to understand what they want, what they're afraid of. And that queen, oh, she was afraid of getting old, afraid of being forgotten, replaced. Ain't nothing sadder than watching someone try to hold on to something they're losing. But I reckon I wouldn't mind watching her try, just for the fun of it. Heh. That's when she started dabbling. Oh yes, dark magic, the real heavy stuff. Locked herself away in that tall tower, curtains pulled tight, candles flickering just right. I bet she stood in front of that mirror for hours, just staring, muttering words that shouldn't be spoken. I'd have given anything to see it. Just peek in real soft like, watching the shadows curl up around her, hearing her whisper them incantations. Heh. I'm real good at staying quiet, real good at watching. And wouldn't you know it, when she came out, she wasn't the same. Oh no. Her eyes were sharper, smile a little wider, hands a bit shakier, like she'd been touching something she wasn't supposed to. I always did like it when folks touch things they shouldn't. Makes them real interesting to watch, real unpredictable. The Queen had a plan, a real wicked one. She brewed up something special, something that glimmered and shone, all red and pretty, like a fresh apple on a summer's day. I bet she held it up real slow, watching the light bounce off its surface, just admiring her work. And I reckon I would have stood right there, watching with her, just to see the way her eyes lit up when she realized what she'd done. I always did appreciate good craftsmanship, especially when it's for something special. Oh, and that apple. Well, it was meant for Snow White. Ain't that just something? I bet the Queen could picture it. Snow White leaning out her window, all bright-eyed and happy, reaching out with them soft little hands to take a bite. I can picture it, too, real clear, watching her chew real slow, eyes getting heavy, lips parting just a little, and then stillness. Ain't nothing quite like watching someone drift off, all quiet and peaceful, like they're just sleeping, real deep. But the Queen, oh, she wasn't going to leave it to chance. No, sir. She was going to pay a visit, make sure the job got done real proper. And I reckon I would have liked to follow her, stay real close behind, just out of sight, just peeking around corners, watching her work. Ha. I wouldn't have missed that for the world. And wouldn't you know it, Snow White had no idea what was coming. She was just sitting in that little cottage, humming her songs, sweeping that floor, not a care in the world. But the Queen, oh, she was on her way, and she wasn't alone. Now, I reckon Snow White didn't suspect a thing that day. She was humming around that little cottage, sweeping up the dust like she always did, sunlight streaming through them windows, catching her hair just right. I bet it looked real nice, all soft and shiny, bouncing with every little step she took. I always did like watching folks when they're just doing their own thing, unbothered, like nothing in the world could touch 'em. Makes it all the more special when something finally does. Hey. Now that Queen, she wasn't taking no chances. She wasn't just going to stroll up to that door and hand it over. Oh, no. She had to get real clever with it. So she dressed herself up, real proper, put on them raggedy old clothes, smeared a little dirt on her cheeks, even hunched her back just a little. I reckon if I'd been there, I'd have watched real close, just peeking around a corner, making sure I didn't miss a thing. Ain't nothing wrong with keeping an eye out, just so long as you don't get caught. She shuffled her way right up to that little cottage, leaned on a crooked stick, and knocked real soft, tap, 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 just like that. I always did like a good knock, polite, gentle, like you're just asking to come in. Snow White heard it, of course, set down her broom and tiptoed to the door, real careful like. I bet she peeked out the window first, just a crack. Saw that old woman standing there with a basket of apples, all red and shiny, looking like something straight out of a dream. The queen must have been real convincing, all hunched over, smiling real wide, holding up that basket like she was just there to spread a little kindness. Snow White couldn't resist. I reckon she didn't even think twice. Just pulled open that door, real soft, real slow. I can picture it. That cool breeze drifting inside, picking up the scent of fresh apples, and maybe just a hint of something else. Something a little too sweet, a little too strong. I always did like it when folks let their guard down. Makes it so much easier to, well, watch. Ain't nothing wrong with being observant. Nothing wrong at all. They chatted for a bit. The queen spinning her little tail, saying she was just a poor old woman, bringing apples to kind folks who'd take 'em. Snow White, bless her heart, didn't suspect a thing. She just smiled, all sweet and innocent, took that apple in her hands, turned it over real slow, admiring how red it was, how perfect it looked. I reckon she must have thought it was the prettiest thing she'd ever seen. I would have watched real close, just to see the way her eyes lit up when she took it, the way her fingers wrapped around it, all delicate like. Ain't nothing wrong with appreciating the little things. Now, the queen, she must have been holding her breath, just waiting for Snow White to take that first bite. I bet she watched her real close. Eyes narrow, fingers clenched around that basket. I always did like that, when folks watch real close. Makes me feel like we got something in common. And then it happened. Snow White leaned in, brought that apple to her lips, took a real slow bite, her teeth sinking in with a soft crunch. I bet the juice trickled down her chin, sweet and cold, just for a second. And then it was over. Just like that. Her eyes went all wide, hands shaking, the apple tumbling right out of her fingers and hitting the floor with a little thud. I always did like that sound. Soft, final, like a whisper that didn't quite make it out. Snow White. She crumpled right there, right onto the floor, hair sprawled out around her, eyes fluttering shut, breathing real shallow. I reckon if I'd been there, I'd have watched a good long while, just to make sure she was comfortable. I always did like it when folks get real still, real quiet. Makes it easier to take it all in. Ain't nothing wrong with watching. Not if you do it real careful. The queen, she didn't linger. Oh no. She slipped out of that cottage, pulled that door shut behind her, and disappeared back into the woods. I bet she was smiling, all big and wide, like she'd just won herself a prize. And Snow White, she just laid there, all soft and still, like she was just sleeping. Ain't nothing wrong with a deep sleep. Not if it's peaceful. Not if you're watching real close to make sure they're all right. But you and I both know that wasn't the end. 'Cause them dwarfs, well, they were on their way back, and I reckon they weren't ready for what they was about to find. Now the dwarfs, well, they came marching back that evening just like they always did, boots stomping through the dirt, voices humming that little tune of theirs. I always did like the sound of folks coming home. Makes things feel real cozy. But that night, well, things weren't quite the same. They knew at the moment they got close. That little cottage was too quiet. Ain't no fire crackling, no soft hum of Snow White singing while she stirred the pot. It was like the whole place had gone to sleep, and not the good kind. I reckon I would have watched real close, just peeking through the trees, seeing 'em slow down, glancing at each other, brows furrowing with worry. I always did like that look, the way folks get when something's wrong and they can't quite figure it out. When they pushed open that door, oh, sugar, I bet the air felt heavy, real thick, like it was trying to tell 'em something. And there she was, just laying there on the floor, all soft and still, hair sprawled out like black ribbons, skin pale as moonlight. I reckon I'd have stood right there in that doorway, just taking it all in, watching the way the light hit her cheeks, the way her hands were folded so gentle at her side. Ain't nothing wrong with admiring the scenery, long as you don't touch. Them dwarfs? Well, I imagine they didn't take it too well. Little hands wringing their hats, eyes all misty. I reckon some of 'em even sniffled a bit, the kind you do when you don't want nobody to hear. I always did think it was real sweet. Folks getting all teary-eyed over something pretty means they got a good heart, means they can feel things real deep. They gathered round her, all whisperin' soft, touching her cheek, brushing the hair out of her face, real gentle-like. I bet they thought she was just sleepin' at first, just restin' real deep. But then the minutes ticked by, and she didn't stir, not one bit. That's when the tears started, real soft, like they didn't want to wake her. I reckon I'd have watched the whole thing, just peeking in through the window, keeping real still, just soaking it all in. Ain't nothing wrong with wanting to be part of the moment. Not if you're real quiet. Now them dwarfs, they weren't about to just bury her and move on. Oh no, they couldn't bear to hide her away. Not when she looked so perfect, so soft and still. So they did something special, built her a coffin. But not just any coffin. This one was made of glass, real smooth, polished up real nice, so you could see her, every inch of her, like she was just taking a little nap. Heh. I always did like things that were see-through. Makes it so much easier to keep an eye on things. They laid her inside, all gentle and soft, brushed her hair back real pretty, folded her hands just right, and slid that glass lid over her real slow. I reckon it must have been something to see. The way the sunlight caught the glass, reflecting off her pale skin, making her look like she was just waiting. I would have watched for hours, just peeking from behind the trees, watching the way the light moved across her face, how her lashes rested so soft against her cheeks, like she might just open them any second. Ain't nothing wrong with waiting, long as you're patient. The dwarfs set her up on a hill, right where the sunlight would hit her just right every morning. And wouldn't you know it, they'd visit her every single day, bringing flowers, cleaning the glass, just watching her sleep. I reckon I'd have made a habit of it too. Just checking in, making sure she was still looking real peaceful. Ain't nothing wrong with keeping watch. I do it all the time. Makes me feel connected. But you and I both know that wasn't the end. Oh no. There was someone else who'd been watching too. Someone who'd been wandering through the woods, looking for something real special. And wouldn't you know it, he was about to find her. Now, I reckon it was only a matter of time before somebody came wandering through them woods. You can't have something that pretty just sitting out there on display without attracting a little attention. Ain't that just the way of things? Hey. I always did like it when folks find exactly what they're looking for, even if they didn't know they were looking in the first place. Now this fella, they called him a prince. Handsome thing, all dolled up in shiny boots, and a coat that looked like it had never seen a speck of dirt. I reckon I wouldn't mind keeping an eye on him for a spell, just to see what he was up to, just to watch the way he moved through those trees, all tall and proper, like he belonged there. Ain't nothing wrong with watching folks pass by, just so long as you don't make a sound. He must have been out riding when he spotted it, that glass coffin glimmering in the sunlight, just tucked away on the hillside like it had been waiting for him. And inside, oh, sugar, there she was, Snow White, all soft and still, hair spread out around her like midnight silk, lips just as red as the day she took that bite. I bet he couldn't believe his eyes. I reckon he stared a good long while, just taking it all in, watching her chest rise and fall, real slow, real shallow, like she was dreaming about something sweet. I always did like watching folks sleep. Makes you feel like you got 'em all to yourself. The prince, well, he couldn't take his eyes off her, climbed right off that horse, and crept up real slow, boots crunching over leaves, barely breathing, like he didn't want to wake her. I reckon if I'd been there I'd have watched real close, peeking out from behind a tree, making sure I didn't miss a single step. Ain't nothing wrong with following folks from a distance. Just means you got a keen sense of curiosity. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Now, them dwarves, they saw 'em coming, and wouldn't you know it, they just let 'em get close. I reckon they were curious, too, watching him lean over that glass lid, his hand pressing against it, real gentle, eyes just staring at her like she was something out of a dream. I reckon I'd have pressed my face right up to that glass, too, just to get a real good look, just to make sure she was as pretty up close as she was from far away. Ain't nothing wrong with appreciating the details, not if you're careful. The prince, well, he didn't waste no time, leaned right down, real slow, breathing all soft, fogging up that glass just a little. I bet he watched her real close, just to see if her eyes would flutter, if her lips would part. I reckon I'd have done the same, watching for just the smallest twitch, the slightest hint of movement. I always did like it when folks wake up real slow, all drowsy-eyed and gentle, like they're drifting back from a dream. And wouldn't you know it, he opened that lid, real careful, like he was afraid she might break. I bet the air got real still, real heavy, like the whole forest was watching. And then he leaned down, real close, just inches away from her face. I reckon he could feel her breath and that soft whisper of life, just enough to make his heart skip. And then he kissed her. Oh, yes, he did, right there on the lips, all soft and sweet, like he'd been waiting his whole life to do it. Ain't that just something? And wouldn't you know it, them eyes of hers, they fluttered open, just a little at first, then real wide, like she'd been caught between a dream and something else. I always did like it when folks wake up confused. Makes it all the more special when they come to real slow, real soft, just trying to figure out where they are. The dwarfs? Well, I reckon they just about lost their minds, all cheering and hooting, dancing around like they'd just seen a miracle. But me, well, I'd have watched real close, just peeking through the trees, watching the way she stretched her arms, the way she smiled up at him, all soft and grateful, like he'd saved her from something terrible, Ain't nothing wrong with watching a happy ending, so long as you keep real still, so long as you don't make a sound. But this wasn't the end. Oh, no, 'cause you know what comes next. That happy ever after. And I reckon old Herbert's got just enough left in him to tell you all about it. Real slow, real sweet, just like you like it. Now after that kiss, well, it wasn't long before Snow White was back on her feet, all bright-eyed and blushing, like she'd just woken up from the sweetest little nap. I bet her cheeks were all rosy, hair a bit tousled, like she'd been dreaming about something real nice. I always did like it when folks wake up looking like that, all soft and warm, just stretching their arms and taking that first big breath. Ain't nothing wrong with watching folks wake up, not if you're real quiet. Now that prince, oh, he wasn't about to let her out of his sight. I reckon he didn't even blink, just stood there all googly-eyed, reaching for her hand like he was afraid she might just float away. I would have watched real close, just peeking from behind a tree, seeing the way his fingers slipped around hers, holding her real gentle, like she was made of glass. I always did appreciate a fella who knew how to be delicate. He ain't nothing wrong with being gentle. Makes things last longer, makes it more special. That didn't waste no time, neither. Oh, no. The prince just swept her right up onto his horse, set her right in front of him, hands on her waist, holding her steady. I reckon I'd have followed him, just from a distance, watching the way she leaned back against him, hair blowing in the breeze, eyes all dreamy-like. Ain't nothing wrong with a little peek, just to make sure they got home safe. I'm real good at keeping folks safe, real good at watching. Yeah. Now that castle. Oh, sugar. That castle was something else. Tall towers that stretched up into the clouds, big old iron gates that creaked when you pushed them, and windows. Oh, I do like a place with lots of windows. Makes it real easy to watch, real easy to see who's coming and going. And Snow White. Well, she fit right in, all them fancy dresses, them shiny shoes, walking up and down the marble halls like she'd been there her whole life. I reckon I'd have taken a real good look, just peeking from one window to the next, watching her glide across them floors, all graceful and sweet, like she was just floating. Ain't nothing wrong with watching, not if you're real discreet. The prince, well, he couldn't keep his eyes off her neither. He followed her around like a lost puppy, always wanting to hold her hand, always wanting to sit real close. I reckon I can understand that. Ain't nothing wrong with wanting to be near something real pretty, just to appreciate it. I reckon I'd have kept my eye on 'em, just peeking through them curtains, watching 'em dance late at night, seeing the way she smiled up at him, like he was the only thing in the world that mattered. I always did like watching folks when they don't know they're being watched. Makes it all the more special. And wouldn't you know it, the folks in the kingdom, well, they took right to her. Snow White would wander the gardens, picking flowers, humming to herself just like she did back in that little cottage. Only this time, there was a lot more to see, a lot more to watch. I reckon I'd have found myself a nice little spot, maybe behind one of them hedges, just sitting real still, watching her stroll by, skirts swaying, hair catching the sunlight. Ain't nothing wrong with enjoying the view, not if you do it real quiet-like. Now folks say she lived happily ever after, that she and the prince went on to rule the kingdom. all smiles and sunshine. But you know, I like to think she still wanders them halls at night, all soft and slow, humming her songs, checking them windows, locking them doors. And if I was there, well, I reckon I'd be watching, just peeking from the shadows, just to make sure she was safe, just to make sure she was comfortable. Ain't nothing wrong with keeping watch. I always did like knowing folks were tucked in real snug. Makes me sleep better at night. He. And I reckon that's the end. Oh, yes, all wrapped up real neat, just like she was. But you know me, sugar. I'm always here, just peeking through the window, waiting for the next story, just hoping you'll come back and listen real close. I always did appreciate your company. Keeps me from getting too lonely. And if you're real quiet, real gentle, maybe you'll hear me just tapping at your window, waiting for you to let me in. Heh, ain't that something? Well, now I reckon that's just about the whole story. Ain't it nice when things wrap up all pretty like that? Snow White sleeping so soft, waking up to that sweet little kiss, getting whisked away to that big old castle, living all cozy with her prince. Ain't that just something? I always did like a happy ending. Makes me feel all warm inside, like everything's just the way it's supposed to be. But you know, I reckon you ain't quite ready to drift off just yet. You're still listening, ain't you? All tucked up in them blankets, eyes getting heavy. But you ain't sleeping. Not yet? I like that. I like knowing you're still with me, still listening real close. Makes it feel like we're having our own little moment. Just me and you. Heh, ain't that nice? Now, I reckon if you like that little story, you might want to come back for another one. Oh, yes. I got plenty more where that came from. All sorts of tales I could whisper right in your ear. Keep you nice and cozy, real comfortable. All you gotta do is hit that big old subscribe button. Just give it a little tap, like someone knocking on your window late at night. Real soft, real gentle. Yeah, just like that. I always did appreciate a good tap. Lets me know you're still listening, still with me. And don't you worry, sugar. Old Herbert's got more stories to tell, more little secrets to share. And I reckon you wouldn't want to miss 'em. So go on, make yourself real comfortable, and just know I'm always here, watching, waiting, just keeping an eye on things. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Not if it's done real careful, not if it's done real quiet. So, I guess I'll be seeing you again real soon. Real soon. You just get yourself nice and cozy, and I'll be right here, keeping watch, just making sure you're all tucked in, all safe and sound. Sleep tight now, sugar, and don't you go peeking out that window. Not tonight. Not while I'm still watching. Ain't that just something?